This is the Spartan Body and Mind Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Winterhalter. The Spartan Body and Mind Podcast is here to help men reclaim their manhood. We do that by helping you stop making shitty excuses. And we help you start taking extreme ownership of the things that really matter. I want to encourage you to go listen to the previous podcast if you haven't listened to that, where we explain just what we do. We're helping you reclaim manhood. And we dive in to the areas of life that really matter: yourself, your relationships, and your purpose. I want to encourage you to check out the SpartanProgram.com, thespartanprogram.com. If you're interested in having help, do that. How do you reclaim your manhood? Well, you create a plan, a path, and you do it with the people to hold you accountable and keep you encouraged. Today on the podcast, we're talking about a midlife crisis. I was reading this last week on just kind of the epidemic of men's health, what's going on in mindset and mental health in the space. And I read a couple articles that talked about the midlife crisis of men moving from kind of the age 40 to 45 to on average to 35. It's becoming younger. And I want to talk about that today and just see what's going on. And maybe you find yourself in your 30s and you feel like you're having a bit of a midlife crisis. And why is that? Well, we're going to look under the hood of what is a midlife crisis and what we can do about it. Let's start off, and let me actually just encourage you two ways. If you're listening to the podcast, man, would you like it? Would you comment? Would you share the link to it? Let others know. Again, we don't have paid sponsors. We just want to try to help give you encouraging insights and encouragement for you to become better men. So share a link, join the free Facebook group, Spartan Body and Mind, join other men and even some women over there trying to get after it with their life, right? Reclaiming womanhood. So want to encourage you to join the free resources and get as much as you can out of it. If you are interested in a paid program to really dial in and reclaim your manhood, go to thespartanprogram.com. Would love to set up a time to talk with you. Okay, the midlife crisis. Let's just, here's a definition I found. What is a midlife crisis? Here's a definition. A phase in a middle-aged person's life between the ages of 35 to 65. I don't know, 65 sounds a little bit old to be having a midlife crisis. I guess if you live to 100, it's fine. It's a phase in a middle-aged person's life between the ages of 35 to 65 where they feel compelled to face or reevaluate their mortality, their confidence, their identity, and their accomplishments. So this is a time in your midlife where you begin to feel compelled to face or evaluate four things: your mortality, your confidence, your identity, and your accomplishments. Multiple articles, as I said, were talking about how this is moving to more the average age of 35 instead of the typical 40 to 45-year-old mark. We're seeing this earlier. And why is that? Well, I want to jump into that and talk about what's happening. And I want to use those four kind of benchmarks, right? The things that definition said we evaluate. It says we evaluate our mortality, our confidence, our identity, and our accomplishments. So let's dig into this. Here's the four areas. Your mortality. You know, I don't know too many 35-year-olds that are thinking about death. That's kind of odd. Maybe we just went through a pandemic, so maybe that could play into a mindset that maybe where you'd be thinking about death, maybe the world, and maybe the news and how the news is just so dramatic, and it's like World War III is going to be right around the corner any day, and all the nukes are going to go off, and maybe that's why a 35-year-old would contemplate death and the reality of their mortality. I think a 35-year-old is probably thinking about this, their mortality, more so because of this. There's just an awakening, I think, to the dullness and apathy of life. And now, I don't mean that life is dull and apathetic. I think that we can get in ruts, though. We can feel, because there's more. This is the other thing with just so much social media and so much. People need things to talk about, and we have just so many more ways to have kind of our attention to be stimulated by things. And a lot of this is just thoughtfulness. And so we'll think about generations, and we'll think about, man, I think I see things like, you think about the boomers, and you think about the age before that, and just this whole contemplation on the 9-to-5 grind. And you think, man, is this all that life has to offer? I think, too, there's an awakening to just how the world works, how capitalism works. And maybe, again, I'm a fan of capitalism, but I also think that there's some things, not just with capitalism, but with the way capitalism has a corrupt side to it, where just the greedy get greedier and the richer tend to get richer. And again, hey, if you want to get rich and keep getting rich, nothing to stop you. But I think there is some shadiness when it comes to just, and maybe it's less about capitalism and more about power. Just people in power and holding on to power and using that power for corrupt gain, gain that should be punished, gain that should have consequences. When it seems like if you're a politician in this country at some of the highest levels, Congressman, Senate, it seems like there's different rules that apply to you than there is the common person. It seems like what I would go to jail for a very long time for, other things get slaps on the wrist or even not even paid attention to. And there just seems to be a corruptness. And so we can look, I think the common man, the 35-year-old then, can read the news and look about what's going on and just go, why am I working so hard? Why am I in the doldrums? Why am I trying to, do good, buy a house, provide for my family, and it just doesn't seem like you can ever get ahead. It seems like right when you get ahead, right when you're starting to maybe have some excess income come in and you're starting to breathe a little bit and pay your bills and get out of debt, right when all of a sudden an economic recession and eggs cost $1 billion at the store. That can be really frustrating. That can make you think about, is this life worth living? It can start to make you think about the mortality of life. Perhaps that's why. Number 2, we begin to think about confidence. This is kind of the typical, I think, midlife crisis, right? The guy gets hair plugs, he buys a Corvette, he tries to act like he's young again. I think that the typical 35-year-old, is even though people are getting married later now, probably by 35 you're married, you might have a kid or two. Right, you've been grinding in your career, climbing the ladder, but you're probably still kind of in the middle somewhere. You probably haven't risen to the executive suite at age 35. And what you're finding is it's harder to advance to the top. Those places are kind of closed off because those people now that are in them have to retire for an opening to be made. So you can kind of feel stuck. You can kind of feel like, well, it can dampen your confidence. And maybe to get ahead, you've got to cut some corners. You see kind of poor behavior awarded or rewarded at your job place, and that can be really frustrating. That can attack your confidence. So man, if I was more like this, the pay increases that you've been getting are probably spent on your family, on things like a house and upgrading the cars, car seats, kids are expensive. And so it tends to, maybe you're not spending as much money on your clothes, on your appearance. In fact, maybe your appearance has gotten a little old. You've been focused so much on grinding, your metabolism has caught up. You're getting older, and now you got a beer gut, and you're out of shape. You're getting winded by going up the stairs at work when the elevator's out of order. You're starting to get a little sore. You're not sleeping as well. Things are catching up to you. You don't like what you see in the mirror. You don't like it because there's wrinkles. You're starting to bald. Again, confidence. Confidence is one of the big things, the midlife crisis. And in such a social media filtered, photoshopped world, a guy can get inside of his head. Do I matter? Is anyone paying attention to me? Your confidence. Number 3, your identity. You might start to ask yourself, who am I? I think this is happening specifically there's just more awareness now at a younger age of asking yourself, who am I trying to impress? who am I? What expectations am I trying to live up to? You're asking yourself, who are you? Who are you and what do you want to be? All of a sudden, are you living out of someone else's beliefs or are they your beliefs? Do you really believe them? What do you really value? What's important to you? What are your desires? Not the desires you have been encouraged to feel the need to desire. Like, what do you desire? And I think this is where maybe for 35, in your 30s, you're starting to ask yourself, like, am I living for me or am I living for someone else? And I think people are afraid of that question because it can sound really selfish. Am I living for me? Is it just all about me? Well, here's the truth. If you're not being honest with yourself, what I mean is not living, when I say living for me, I'm not talking about a selfish, self-absorbed, narcissistic way. I'm talking about a truthful way. If you aren't living according to what you truly believe, if those beliefs are someone else's or a culture's or a community's, and you're kind of believing them because you're a part of this community and you kind of want to stay in the community, but you don't really believe it, you're going to live a dichotomized life. You're going to struggle mentally and emotionally and physically. It's going to have these false effects because you're not really being true to you. And you might not even know who you is. And this is, again, where a midlife crisis comes. All of a sudden you're going, that belief is not what I really believe. Maybe I don't know what I believe, but I know it's not that. Or I don't really value these things that I've been told to value, or I've been just in a community where it has been valued. And again, I'm not saying these are bad beliefs or bad values, but you have to ask yourself, is it really you? Are these the things that are really driving you, that you're going to make decisions based out of? And sometimes the things that you believe and the things that you value aren't really true to you. You just feel a pressure, an expectation. So you have to ask yourself, maybe this is what's going on. It's a good time to evaluate. So there's the evaluation of mortality, the evaluation of confidence, evaluating your identity. And then the fourth thing is accomplishments. All of a sudden you can ask yourself, what's really important? And this, I would have a hard time thinking this is happening at 35, and maybe it is, but usually this happens at 45 to 50. And I would say there's probably going to be multiple moments of this midlife crisis kind of thinking in your life. It's not just going to happen all at once. There's going to be parts. Confidence will probably happen a little earlier, 35 to 45. Identity, 35 to 45. Accomplishments, probably 45 to 55 when you start actually accomplishing things. Mortality, 50 to 60 probably. So, but accomplishments is this. You're going to ask yourself, what is really important? You're going to look around your office and go, these plaques, this paycheck, the stock options, dividends, whatever they are, like, is this really all worth the 65 hours a week, the time away from my kids? Is this what I'm living for? Am I really here to please others? Am I here to please my parents? Am I here to, right? All these kind of questions are going to roll through your head. And you've got to, whose expectations are you living for? Are the things that I'm giving my life to, these accolades, this attention, is this really worth it? And again, this is a good thing to do. And here's the thing. Just because you ask some of these questions, just because you evaluate at this time in your life, doesn't mean that your life up to here was bad or pointless or like people. So for me, I spent 20 years in vocational ministry. I was a pastor for 20 years. And now I'm moving out of pastoral ministry into this space. I do two things. I help men reclaim their manhood. That's what the Spartan Program is. That is kind of my life coaching portion of my life. The other portion of my life is I run a business coaching and consulting company, Halting Winter. And that's where I help people, owners specifically, I help business owners either launch their business or relaunch, help them grow their business. Because I'm passionate about, I think owning a business is awesome. I think it's such a great way to invest into a community. It's a great way to use your skills. I think, man, business ownership is awesome, and it's hard. A lot of failure in the business community. And so I want to come alongside and help people's dreams come true. So I help people launch their businesses and help people grow them. Those are the two things I do with my life. I help men reclaim manhood, and I help business owners accomplish their dreams through their businesses. Two things. And people, why do I say that? Because this is what I'm giving the second half of my life to. I worked really hard to pour out into people through I was a professional musician, outside, inside the church. I became a pastor. I became a lead pastor, and I poured into people's lives, wanting their lives to be better. And now I'm doing the same work. I'm just changed my fields. I'm doing it specifically to men and specifically to business owners. And why is that? Because I did this. I had a bit of a midlife reevaluation to look and say, what do I want to do with my life, and where's the best setting for it? I found that the church wasn't the best setting for what I wanted to do. And you heard that a little bit in the last podcast. There were a lot of men who were struggling, who they needed to reclaim manhood. And because the church is not just about men, right? There's women and there's children and there's a totality of people. I can't just focus on helping men reclaim manhood. That's not what the church is for. But that's what I'm passionate about. So guess what? I'm going to step outside of this space, because this space I didn't want to corrupt that space. I want someone who feels that's their space, that's their desire, is to lead that particular audience forward. I want them to, find their seat. We should find the best seat that fits us on the bus. And that wasn't the best seat for me. And so now I feel like I'm in a better seat. I'm going to be happier. The people that I lead will probably be more impacted, more affected for the positive, because I'm in a better seat, and if they're going to work with me, they're going to get the best out of me. You have to ask yourself that, right? This is part of the crisis of going through, and this is where I would say a midlife crisis. A midlife crisis is only a crisis if you throw up your hands and you throw in the towel. What do I mean? If all of a sudden you start thinking about mortality, you start thinking about your confidence, your identity, and your accomplishments, and what you do is go get the hair plugs and buy the Ferrari and just say, F the world, I'm gonna live for myself in a real selfish, narcissistic way, that's called a midlife crisis. That dude just had a midlife crisis. He didn't reevaluate well. He just got mad at the beginning of his life, and now he's upset. That's what I was saying. I look upon the last 20 years of my life with great affection. I love the work that I did, that I was a part of. I loved various aspects. Were some of it hard? Absolutely. But anything is going to have hardship in life. This idea that you're going to find a job and a marriage and friendships are just going to be perfect, just all sunny days and bright unicorns, that is not going to happen. Life is work. It's work to make enjoyment. It is work to experience deep, abiding things in your relationships and your vocation. It's work. And it should be fun work. That's why finding the best spot, the best seat on the bus, is going to help in that. But a midlife crisis is only a crisis if you throw up your hands and you get mad that you wasted part of your life. You don't waste a part of your life. You're growing, you're learning. And what you learn now, it took all that to get you to this space. So be encouraged that you're having this midlife moment. But instead of making it a midlife crisis, why don't you make it a midlife correction? It's only a crisis if you allow it to be. It can be a midlife correction where you change, where you allow yourself to say, yeah, I want to do something different. I want to do something better. I want to become a better person. I want to become better in my relationships. I want to find a better fit for me in my vocation and in my avocation and in my other purposes and areas of life. Change for the better. So what to do? Here's 4 questions to ask yourself that I think would help if you're experiencing some midlife realities. Number one, if I knew I was going to die in 10 years, how would I live? Here's the mortality question. If you knew you were going to die in 10 years from today, how would that change the way you're living? Number two, what can you do right now to be physically, mentally, and emotionally fit? Again, this is confidence. How do you become fit? And this is going to be the podcast that comes up. The next podcast, the one that comes out later this week, will be on fitness. What does it mean to be fit? Is that just six-pack? Is that just Instagram fit? Is that what, Men's Health, the magazine, tells me is fit? We're going to talk about what is fitness. But you have to ask yourself, what can you do right now to become physically, mentally, and emotionally fit? That will help you be confident, and a healthy confidence to step into whatever life has for you. Number three, here's the identity question. What do you believe, and why is it important? What do you believe, and why are those beliefs important to you? Not to your mom, not to your friends, to you. What do you believe, and why are those beliefs important to you? Number four, here's the accomplishments, the legacy question. What do you want to be remembered for? Probably changed from when you were 25. 25-year-olds probably want to be remembered for all the work they did. They were famous. They were important. When you start to get older, you start to think, you know what do I want to be? You start having kids, and you're like, what do I want to be remembered for? Maybe it's not putting in 80-hour work weeks. Maybe it's the moment with my children. Maybe it's the friendships. Maybe it's ask yourself, if you knew you were going to die in 10 years, how would you live? What can you do right now to be physically, mentally, and emotionally fit? What do you believe, and why is it important to you? And number four, what do you want to be remembered for? If you're ready to hit the reset button, if you're ready to avoid a midlife crisis and instead experience a midlife correction, I want to encourage you to check out the Spartan Program, thespartanprogram.com. Check it out, thespartanprogram.com. Make sure to put the, T-H-E, thespartanprogram.com. Go check it out and see if that would be a fit, that we would help you create a customized plan to help you become fit, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. We would give you a customized plan. We would put you on the path so that you start accomplishing the goals that would lead you to the life you want to live. And we'd surround you with people that want to row in that same direction. Men reclaiming their manhood. If that's you, hit us up. We'd love to see you there. Until next time, join us next time when we talk about fitness. What is fitness? We'll see you then.